welcome. In this tutorial, we're going to go over the deliverables and the presentations that you have to do for every sprint. So let's get started. In the deliverables, you've done this a lot of times, 341, 343, 344. Pretty sure other classes too you've done. But so you know that you're going to have the SRS, the SAD, but now you're doing this in an agile process. So you're going to have things like sprint status, backlogs, sprint plannings, and also when you do submit your deliverables, it's good to know that your GitHub repo is going to be evaluated on every sprint. So please try to comment your code, try to make it neat because you wouldn't want to lose points on bad code just because it was the first or second sprint. So the process is pretty simple. Every 2 weeks, you have the 2 weeks to add the new content to your deliverables, update the old, and at the end of the 2 weeks, you're gonna submit. So hopefully you don't submit late because it would be kind of a waste, especially the fact that you could do most of the work beforehand. So you have really the 2 weeks to tackle these. And if you get into the good habit of doing these throughout the 2 weeks, it becomes repetitive and you don't have to worry about last minute, we have to do this. So in these slides, we're going to talk about every deliverable and what they cover, what is new and what needs to be updated. For the parts that are not new for the next deliverables, I'm not going to go over every time, but let's get started. So backlog is your user stories. Everything from the USPs for them, the priority, and the description of each user story. Release plan for what you're planning to do in your sprint one. Don't be too optimistic because you don't want the first sprint to start off with already not completing all your user stories and pushing user stories to the next sprints. Software architecture document. You want to focus on the core aspect of your application so that the entire team is on the same page in terms of the overall structure of the code. Naming conventions. You don't want every team member to be creating dummy classes to make his part work, and then when you come to merge them together, you have some discrepancies. Risk assessment and management is something you did in 384. Anything from using a new technology is a risk because you don't know if you're estimating that it's going to be easy, it's going to be hard, so the learning curve for those, and basically how you want to mitigate those risks by, we're going to have a whole session where a person's going to go through all the tweaks, all the basics for that technology, and where he's going to tutor the rest of the team. And UI mockups is going to be the first draft of the flow of your application and how you feel it should look like, and you're going to get feedback on every sprint by the stakeholder and by the teacher. So you get a good idea if this is looking like what they want, or you get to fix as you go on. Sprint 1 deliverable, again, backlog, software architecture, risk assessment, you're going to be updating those. So there isn't much that changes, it's just keeping it up to date. Release plan is basically what, again, you're going to be doing for sprint 2. This is going to be on every sprint, you're going to be building the sprint release plan for the next sprint. UI mockups, you're still building new mockups because you got feedback and now you want to restructure what you did. Now, test plan is something you're doing in 345. So basically, what you want to test and make sure that you are producing your test in every sprint, it will make your life way easier. When you come to change some core structure of your app, at first when you're doing a little app, going and clicking on the 3 main buttons that you have isn't so hard, but the more the app gets complex, the harder it becomes to keep track of everything. And the defect tracking, so the more you guys will be using your app and playing around with it, you're going to start noticing some bugs. You want to have a log of those because you don't want, during your presentation, when the client is playing with your app and is about to hit that button and then you remember, we have a bug in that, that would be kind of a stupid mistake just because you didn't log it. In the next sprint, the only new parts are going to be the quality report. Everything else is, when it says new for a release plan, is because you're creating a new one, and for the mockups also you're still creating some new mockups. And the quality report is basically, as you've seen in 345, there's different branches in terms of how a code could go. when going through a method based on an if statement or loop. So quality report is basically checking if your tests are actually covering all the paths that are possible for your code, and also the overall quality of your code. If you have duplicate code, if you have too long methods, this will help know. The tool that you'll be using for this is going to be SonarQube, and we're going to have a tutorial on it, so don't worry about this. So let's keep going. So number 3, again, you get the hang of it, so you're just going to be updating. And number 4, same thing. Number 5 is your last sprint, and it's worth a lot because you want to make sure that all the feedback that you got throughout all the deliverables are now into this. You've tuned it, and everything is prepped for a final report. And you're going to demo officially to their client all the functionalities that you had promised originally. Hopefully you are able to go above and beyond. And voila. For the second part, we are going to talk about the presentation aspect of your sprints. And every team member is going to be required to talk. It doesn't mean all team members talk in the same presentation, but you could iterate over who goes this time, who goes next time. But we want to see a full team participation in this. So if you know that somebody is not very comfortable with presentations, try to help them, because if they fail, you fail as a team, and that would kind of suck just due to lack of practice. How to structure your presentations? You want to start off by introducing. For the first presentation, you're introducing your team, yourself, and what project you chose and what platforms you're using. But then it becomes more of a recap about what was talked last time, the new mockups that you have, the next sprint planning, and any technical info that you need to deliver to a client or that they ask for. And just know that the content that you have, you don't want a lot of words, but you want some visual content that if they're following the slides, they know what you're talking about. If they're listening to you, they know what you're talking about. And they kind of complement each other. Don't have those slides with all the text and as much information you could shove in, because you're going to lose your client when he's going to be focusing on reading your slides and they don't listen anymore on what you're saying. And like I said, practice, practice, practice. So hopefully this was simple. I'm going to leave you off with this nice little quote, and good luck.